Designing your landscape and planting your gardens can be very intentional or unintentional depending on your personality as the gardener. Some examples of intentional planting would be if we start along our property line or a fence line and we plant our tallest items to the back, and then as we move forward we go ahead and plant lower growing things until we get to the front where we have the lowest. An example of unintentional planting might be more of a cottage garden style where you're essentially looking to fill in spaces and gaps inside your garden, and you want to fill up your whole flower bed with different things that just add beautiful color and texture, but they might not be clearly defined as other gardening designs. You with me? But even those of us that have really strong ideas as to what our garden design or intention should be, I'm one of those people who likes taller things in the back, shorter things in the front, just for example. Sometimes our plants have a mind of their own. So that can be really fun too, waiting and looking to see what is going to happen. Or maybe we have a centerpiece, a focal piece, something like a big piece of statuary or a garden fountain that we plant around. So that is the center focal point for that garden space, and everything else we plant has to showcase that item or a very special plant, maybe a Japanese maple or my Kilmarnock willow tree, for example. Everything got planted around to highlight that tree or that specimen. We may also have certain things that we want in our gardens to anchor our garden beds. So it might not be a center focal point, but it is going to keep balance and an anchor in the garden, like boulders. This whole rock garden was designed around the boulders. So they're spread out, they may be in different spaces or locations, but the whole idea was this rock garden was to showcase those rocks and boulders. This area right here is a fabulous example of the plants kind of going a lot crazier than I anticipated. So I had planted this ham and eggs lantana here in this spot because I thought, yeah, I want a little pink and yellow over here, and I had a bit of a blank space. Well, here's what it looked like when I very first put it in the ground earlier this year. This is the growth from only spring until fall. The plant has gotten tremendous in size. I am not complaining. I think it looks glorious, but it was not what I thought it was going to be, even after I had read the tag on it. Now, the lantana is a perennial in my area anyway. Here it is in all of its glory today. Now, here's the other thing. I have another plant that I put behind it that was planted last fall because it's a fall blooming plant. However, they're in a little bit of competition now. Let me show you. My purple Mexican sage right behind it. Purchased that in the fall, knew that it was a fall bloomer, knew that it was tall, and I wasn't really sure where it was going to go. So I put it in this space over here because I thought, hey, yeah, I need some height. Again, not realizing that the lantana was going to get as absolutely tall as it did. So now I need to trim my lantana back a bit so I can really showcase that sage. Now, if you know me, you know that I love to try to propagate any plant I can. I have tried in the past to propagate lantana clippings and get them to root, and I have not been successful at it. Let me know if you have, and I wonder if I just need to try maybe a little something different or root them directly into soil instead of water or something. But for now, those clippings are just going away and moving on to the next. Besides our plants growing way bigger than we expected them to, another example of unintentional planting would be things that self-seed in our gardens, come back for us without us replanting seeds in that area, or volunteers of certain plants. This right here is my great example of the Dragon's Breath celosia, which you can see now is beginning to bloom. I had it over here last year in the fall, and it absolutely self-seeded. Every single one of these things is its own separate plant. And I have also dug up others of these and have put them in other areas of the yard, and I am still left with this huge plentiful area full of this gorgeous color. Now, this one happens to be a tremendous blessing. So self-seeding plants, think about those. If you know in advance that you're buying a plant that self-seeds, just think about that when you're placing it somewhere to make sure that it would be a happy garden surprise if it sprouted new babies the following year for you. Just to poke a little bit of fun at this self-seeding plant though, you can see here in my greenhouse, which is currently not in use because it's too hot out, but more dragon's breath that's self-seeded in here from over the winter. And then of course, inside my waterfall, you watched me dig out a dragon's breath earlier this year because I saw it had self-seeded right in the middle. I took a huge one out and I have another huge one in there. So somehow I also had the seeds from that plant up inside my waterfall. Another example of a self-seeding plant that is generally a blessing for it to be this way would be the blanket flower. I have a lot of blanket flowers throughout my whole yard because this baby self-seeds so much. So again, just be mindful when you're planting certain things that it may grow up babies in places that you didn't expect. Some other plants I have that are great examples of volunteers. Well, I have more dragon's breath celosia, but I dug it from that back area and planted it up here. But I have a crepe myrtle baby that is coming through my Dusty Miller right here. I have a loropetalum that must have had roots down here at some point, but it's now coming up. I have a little yucca here and a little iris here. So this guy would have to be dug up and moved to a different spot. And then another example would be this barberry over here. I had a barberry here last year. I actually moved it. And again, I guess I left a little piece of root behind and it's growing up a new plant. I don't know if you would technically call those volunteers because they did have a bit of root there. Nevertheless, growing a full new bush was a surprise to me. Let's talk about some more intentional gardening. We may want to plant things purposely for shade and or privacy. And all of the Leland cypress that are lining the back of my fence, I planted there for privacy. And thank goodness I did, because I have this beautiful pool area here that I wanted privacy for. So planting with intention in that way makes perfect sense as well. Propagation would be another example of intentional gardening. Now, this whole back area of my yard, or I should say area behind my fence. By the way, we've been getting tons of rain, so if anything looks crazy windblown or full of water, that's why. I created this area because it was the only shady area I really had in my yard, and my idea was to have tons of foliage plants that were just looking amazing back here. And guess what? Coleus was the answer for me to fill in this space beautifully, because you can propagate Coleus so stinking easily. So intentional gardening. I was able to design this whole space with Coleus in mind, thinking about taking cuttings and rooting them in soil and water and soil and water, and just enjoying the fruits of my labor as I filled in an entirely brand new garden space, largely with this Coleus. Now, I'm pointing this area out as intentional gardening because if we take a look back at what this space looked like earlier this year, it literally had to be cleaned out of weeds. I wanted to be mindful of the tree roots that were underneath from the Leland cypress growing here. And I had to design an entire garden with this small space in mind, but knowing I wanted to fill this area up with texture, color, and ultimately dimension. So I started from nothing at all back here, and filled the space up with a minimal amount of money out of my pocket just from propagating things. Intentional gardening. And as we exit the shade garden, we have the secret garden here defined by that blue boardwalk. And I would like to say that this is another example of intentional gardening. Oh, look at what the rain is bringing. New blooms. Yes. Intentional gardening because I had a very narrow space here between where my pool is over here and the fence line is over here, but yet I wanted a little destination, a little tropical oasis. The blue boardwalk gave me that, and then of course all the plantings that I had put down here, especially to make this vision come true, also helped with that. Now, we had a very, very difficult summer. A lot of you have had the same thing, so we have to be patient with the looks of the way some of these plants are right now. But blue boardwalk, creating a garden in a narrow space, or as we just showed, creating a garden in a vacant, tiny space, intentional gardening. Looking at this end of the pool where my banana trees are planted, it's both intentional and unintentional because I planted the banana trees here for the tropical look and feel, but also to add some height for some privacy around the pool as well. This year, however, was brutal in terms of Mother Nature, giving us hot, humid days, many without any break, barely any wind or air circulation, and therefore my banana trees really suffered. I had bugs everywhere, I had dying fronds everywhere. So sometimes you set out with great intention and Mother Nature has a hand in changing the way things look for you. This area down here in my white pots, you could barely even tell that there are white pots under there. This area was beginning to suffer also due to the same problems. The heat and humidity were causing bug issues. I had to do a lot of clipping back. I had to use neem oil, and you can see it's working and has freshened this plant's life and has allowed it to push out some new growth. So this is the irisine, and that is a great example of something that was looking awful just a month ago. Mother Nature honestly could not mess with these begonias at all. These begonias have been perfect, 100% perfect this whole time. So these ones in particular didn't suffer from root rot. I know a lot of folks had that problem because just whatever, this moisture issues that we had with the humidity, things not drying out properly, etc. But I just wanted to talk about sometimes you have intentions for your garden, and those intentions can be met with difficulty because Mother Nature has other plans for us. My garden doing a bounce back though in the October time frame. We're talking about my yellow hibiscus blooming now when I basically didn't see any blooms this summer. My caladium standing up and pushing out new growth once again. Things that are looking better and bouncing back now because Mother Nature has now been kind. We are starting to get some relief in the garden. We are starting to see new things pop out with blooms and buds, like these dahlias that are just amazing flowers and things like that. Things that have been in the garden just waiting for their time to shine. So here's an example of Mother Nature giving us a break. I am curious to hear about your gardening style, and if your intention originally is to set out and be very clearly defined, or if it's a little bit more whimsical or haphazard and you kind of just put things in the ground wherever you want them to be. I'm interested in it because gardening is my passion, and these are the things that I love to talk about. Thank you for watching. I hope you found some inspiration in this conversation today, and until next time, happy planting.